Welcome to Raging Bullets, Pop Culture and Whatnot, episode 612. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of You-Know, the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying, is wondering why Sean wants to change the name of the podcast to Life with Sensei and what that means. So says the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are going to be joined by some very close friends talking about the great drama, Life with Althaar. And it's a great, we have about a 2-hour discussion, really, where we talk in depth about it. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Remember, DCB Service is your comic book and really pop culture-related pre-order source. InStockTrades.com is your source for hardcovers, collected editions. It's a great opportunity to catch those books all at an amazing discount. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Pop Culture and Whatnot, a division of Raging Bullets, is normally a spoiler show. However, this time we keep it very light so you guys can listen on, because this is an absolutely wonderful show that I've already referred it, to other people. So please listen, enjoy.
Let us talk with the team behind the scenes of Life with Althaar.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Joining us on this very special episode from Life with Althaar is Ian W. Hill, Berit Johnson, and Eli Ganias. And if I butchered anybody's names, I want to apologize because I'm so excited to talk with Life with Althaar. And Ian will tell you, Eli will tell you, I butcher names constantly on the show, and it's constantly apologetic. So I hope I got them right.
It's actually Berit.
Berit? I apologize, Berit.
But I respond to anything that starts with a B. People constantly are getting it wrong, so yeah.
No, that's one of the reasons why I ask in the beginning, is I want to make sure I get it right. I really want to talk about Life with Althaar, because this was something that Eli's been a longtime friend of our show and has been, over the years, very kind in sending us these wonderful song parodies that have been a part of our show. Through our conversations, he pointed me to Life with Althaar. I am a huge fan of audio drama. I grew up being a fan of audio drama. Right now, one of the backgrounds we've got going here behind Ian is Doctor Who. I'm a big fan of the Big Finish Doctor Who audio dramas, which for a while was our only way to get brand new Doctor Who. So when I heard Life with Althaar was this type of production, I was super stoked. Then I heard the first episode, and the production quality and the characters and the world that you've created here pulled me in. I just really wanted to be able to talk with you. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show. And could you tell our listeners who haven't had a chance to be exposed yet to Life with Althaar, what is Life with Althaar?
Well, we can tag team this, Berit. Life with Althaar is a sitcom set just about 500 years in the future on a space station at the far end of human space in the Tea Garden system called the Fairgrounds, which was built to be humanity's great show-off when they came out, basically, to the galaxy and got to know all of the older species. They wanted to say, look at us and look at all the wonderful things humans have done. And the rest of the galaxy.
It's not officially called the Fairgrounds. It's officially called the Human Exchange Concourse. And it's basically this abandoned World's Fair site in space.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the world, like most of the World's Fair sites around the world, where they build this big thing and then it just becomes a white elephant that sits there and falls apart. So it didn't work, but it's become this place where, as Berit always says, people don't deliberately go, they end up. It's kind of a last resort for people who don't fit in, don't have anywhere else to go. And it's
including most of our characters, yeah.
Yeah, most of our characters are people who just didn't fit in or had no place else to go. They're all, including our main character, John B., who left Earth for what at first are mysterious circumstances. But of course, we do know, this isn't a huge spoiler, of course, that he was involved in a teleport accident that copied him. So the copy as legally as the case is the legal him. He lost his entire status legally, even as a human being. He had to re-register as a robot.
Yeah, he lost his surname. He's not allowed to contact his family. There's a restraining order keeping him from getting within 10 light years of Earth, which is why he's on the fairgrounds in the first place.
Yeah, he basically had to get as far away from Earth as could go in human space. And when he showed up at the fairgrounds, he discovered that despite the fact that nobody wants to be there, rents are ridiculously high, and he only found one good one, was with an alien named Althaar, who did not, however, put into the listing for the apartment that he is an Althaurian. And Berit, Althaurians?
Althaurians are the nicest, sweetest, most charismatic, kindest species. Everyone in the galaxy loves them, except for humans who instinctively react to the sight of an Althaurian with primal terror, leading to vomiting and or soiling themselves. So Althaar, when the series starts, has been trying to find a human roommate because he really, really wants to overcome this problem and make friends with the one species in the galaxy that his species has not been able to befriend yet.
And, of course, around Althaar and John on the fairgrounds are a collection of other people who are the 9 main characters. One of them, Eli, plays John's boss. John got a job out there working for WSS, which is a contracting, an unpleasantly bureaucratic repair
giant
company.
Faceless corporation. On the fairgrounds, the local franchise is just the two of them.
Just these two guys, and they have, because of various union restrictions, they only repair certain things. Drinks machines, wires, and very small wires and windows. Most of it, the rest is handled by the robot union, because there's a lot of robots on the fairgrounds. Most of them were built to look, there's hundreds of them, and they were built to look either like famous humans from the past or fictional characters from humanity. They were basically, Disneyland audio animatronics that were there to, show, but sentient, because robots do actually have AIs. They were there to show aliens the history of Earth. And
they were part of the displays, basically, and then when the aliens just weren't interested, they just got reprogramming. So they're doing all the various menial jobs all over the station.
Working in fast food restaurants.
But they still look like Kaiser Wilhelm or what have you. So yeah.
Winston Churchill, Christopher Walken, Sherlock Holmes. So, yeah, there's a large collection, William S. Burroughs. But
they've got a very, very strong union.
Very strong union. And, we have the commander of the fairgrounds, Mindy Toriana, who's, just a constantly frustrated with how things can't run on the fairgrounds person, and sometimes frustrated with the second in command, Lieutenant Frawl, who's an energy cloud, a sentient energy cloud who exists in 27 dimensions and all time and all space simultaneously, and for some reason has chosen to become a physical presence on the fairgrounds at this time in history. Sometimes just simply it seems to give sass mouth. So, and then there's a bar where the characters hang out, and we have the musicians in the bar and the owner of the bar, Chip Frinkle, who's the owner, and Stops and D. Stops is an alien of the Zibidont species, which have how many arms? 28 arms?
Limbs. 28
limbs.
12 arms, yeah.
Right. So Stops can play many instruments at once. He's a virtuoso on all of them. But he also, like many in his race, has a horrible addiction to peanut butter. So he's a
powerful hallucinogen for his species.
Yeah. Which is also one of those things that humans just haven't had a lot of luck with other species, because they have a lot of elements that have really, other species try to be nice and try to be forgiving and open-minded, but they go out in the universe and they wind up introducing a powerful hallucinogen to the Zibidon Empire. It turns out that humans are a little more interested in sex with non-humans than most of the other species are.
Yeah, basically the reputation is that a human will try to have sex with anything.
But not Althaar.
Including abstract concepts.
Except Althaar. Althaar is
except for Iltorians, yeah.
Iltorians are the one exception to Rule 34 in the entire galaxy.
The only one.
The only one. That is canonical for us.
But yeah, humanity really believed when they built the fairgrounds that it was going to be like Star Trek, for example, where, there are all these older, more advanced species, but the humans suddenly show up and everyone agrees, well, obviously they're great and we should put them in charge. And that really just didn't happen.
Yeah, no, humans wound up being the spear carriers. So it's basically, in some ways it's the structure of a sitcom, and we call it a sitcom because that's how we thought of it with the 9 main characters and creating a group that felt like your sitcom buddies you wanted to spend with. But it's also this longer science fiction story, which has sometimes some very dark and dramatic aspects to it that we did plan out that our characters would be going through.
And speaking of which, we left out the 9th main character, Mrs. Frondranax.
Oh, Mrs. Frondranax,
an alien of the Fugalnari species who look mostly like houseplants. And she started out as the nosy neighbor, but she's had quite an arc
since the beginning. Yes,
as we're now in the middle of season 3.
Yeah. So and that was all created around, to a certain extent, most of the characters, and a lot of it. It was having some of the basic concept and then thinking about the actors we wanted to work with and creating characters around them. So it was this, we run a theater company, and that was, this was where it came from.
And that's how a lot of our theater work is devised also with the actors. So these are all people that we had created theatrical work with in the past, and they were people, that I knew made me laugh, and that we knew we already worked very well with. So when we came up with this, we just put it out to the entire company and asked them, how they wanted to be involved. And so that's where the writer's room comes from, the 8 of us.
So, yeah, it was just a theater company, and Berit and I, who had a long-standing, both of us, interest in audio as a medium, who had been looking for something. And then one day, July 2nd, 2017, the idea appeared to us. So, and within 90 minutes, we had a great deal of the whole series in front of us.
One of the things that I love the most about the audio medium is the ability to create visuals and to create feelings and emotions that you would normally see. Like even our Althaar's voice, the way that when you first meet him, you get this like cringe almost at his voice, but then John's right. He is so nice. And I mean, so you're like, and that increases like episode to episode. So like at first you're like, okay, he's nice, but still it's cringeworthy. But then as the episodes go on, like I found myself by like episode 3 going, he is so nice, and I find myself liking the guy, like hiding behind bananas and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's all like he's trying so hard to understand the culture, to make John comfortable. He totally understands the fact that there's this natural human reaction to the species, and doing everything to make. Like, how can I, through this research, break down these walls? And it's I love sitcoms that do this, where there's humor to it, but the characters are grounded and very real. And everything that you were mentioning before, yes, it sounds so insane, but it's funny. Each episode is structured in such a way, especially early on, with this great pace of gradually introducing characters to you. So you get comfortable with them. The world starts expanding. You are hanging out by, like, episode 3, I'm hanging out with them. And a lot of that's due to initially, like, John's relationship with HF, and HF becomes kind of John's guide, which becomes our guide, because John's us in the beginning, because John's experiencing all this for the first time. So I really loved John B, because I felt like, okay, I'm like John. I'm wandering around this place. I'm getting to know the whole location. HF is kind of in the know early on. So he's telling us like everything, about the area, and it's clear that like he's got a little snark about some of it, and it's great. It's such a cool relationship between the two of them, because you start to get this idea, this place is much bigger than I'm realizing. And I loved that you didn't introduce too much too soon, that it was that gradual expansion of the world, because by the time we got to the bar, and as it started expanding to even, multiple races having this like festival, by then you're like in this place where I really understand the world. I'm hanging out with them, which is all the best sitcoms do that, right? You tune in every week, not just because of the humor, not just because of what craziness is going to happen now. It's also because you actually want to hang out with these people. It's escape from your world and a journey into their world. You feel like you're there for that time. And I was eating this up as I was listening to it, Fort. So when you started envisioning this, how did you wrap your head around this complex world? Because it's really very, very rich. I'm just curious of that, because I love the world.
Everything started from John and Althaar. And it started literally from the creation of Althaar happening out of nowhere in a bar on Metropolitan Avenue in Brooklyn. We were in a bar. We had just seen a show at the theater down the block where we were working. Our friend Tom Chow was doing a solo show. Interestingly enough, Dean Haspiel, the comic artist who also did our logo, was in the bar with us at the time, but with a bunch of his friends. And we were sitting there, and Berit and I were having a nice lunch and getting a little tipsy. There was a ball game on the TV, the Mets versus the Phillies. And at that point, the Mets had a young up-and-comer who didn't really do very well by the name of Aaron Althaar. He later went to the Phillies, and then he went to South Korea. And at one point, and we're being a little goofy, Berit and I, as we are, and riffing with each other and joking. And the TV I hear the announcer, with his accent say, as Aaron Althaar is about to bat, Althaar is going up. So I turned to Berit and said, Althaar is going up. And Berit said,
Althaar can go up.
And suddenly there was this character right in front of us.
I think I had the notion of this disgusting alien trying to fly up to help someone, and everyone around the alien just being like, no, please don't help. You're too gross. And that eventually developed into not being able to look at Althaar at all without vomiting.
And it became a within about a half an hour, he had a roommate by the name of John who had to live with him. And, it was just me doing riffing again on soap operas and things, and just suddenly going, life with Althaar. and it was, oh, okay, wait a minute. And then it was like, wait, is this and then, because the thing is, Berit and I, we've always had a big interest in audio. I grew up in particular listening to the albums of the comedy group, the Firesign Theater, which were hugely influential on everything in my life. They did these amazing, often very science fiction-y, sometimes comic book influenced melanges of a 40-minute piece that was just amazing audio and multi-layered and dense. And I grew up with that. And then I would also listen to radio shows. Berit and I, actually, when Berit and I first moved in here together 20 years ago, one of the few CDs we had almost no music, but we had a 50 CD collection of old radio shows from the 30s to the 50s. So we were just listening to those all the time. It was like sitting around at night listening to 30s radio. And audio has always been big for me. And I had been thinking that maybe, because we do theater with heavy audio, but maybe we should do an audio thing. And Berit had been thinking along the same lines. And
I would say, it would be nice if we had something that our company did that was, shareable, as opposed to the completely ephemeral nature of theater, something that people could post a link to if they liked it and say, hey, check out what these people are doing. And maybe direct some people to our theatrical work. Of course, now we have fans all over the world, which is nice, but they're not going to be coming from Australia to see our little plays in Brooklyn, most likely.
Right. But so it was meant to be this like side thing from the theater that also to keep, since we now suddenly had an actual company of actors after 20 some odd years of doing it, we had this real group of 25 people that wanted to work together, and we could only really do 1 or 2 shows for like 3 to 5 weeks a year. We needed to have something to do with them the rest of the time. So we had started thinking, well, audio would be the way. But as always, also with our company, with theater, I used to do film stuff too. It's always trying to find an idea that can only really work out in that medium. You know, you do in film what's correct for film, you do for theater what's correct for theater. And I wanted an audio idea that wouldn't sound like we were just trying to do a visual screenplay or a play that was being adapted to audio. And when suddenly we realized we had a situation with 2 characters and this friendship, and one of them could not, in fact, even be presented visually to human beings, we were like, this is the audio idea. This is it. This is a sitcom. And, you know, literally we sat there at the table that first day going, okay, who will Ivana play? Who will Alyssa play? Who will Zuri play? And going through and figuring out what kinds of characters in this world the actors in our company would be good at. And as you said, thinking about hanging out with things, this is something Berit and I have had kind of in some ways doing a you know, we watch sitcoms, but we also kind of study them, but we had never expected, I think, to ever write one. But we had paid a lot of attention, in particular to when we watched on DVD News Radio and Community. We had also watched
the ensemble dynamics. And, having a cast of characters who are all interesting when any one of them is paired off with any other one of them.
That was always important, was if you put any 2 of these main characters together, something interesting will happen. And I felt like that was a really important part of the dynamic, because we created these 9 main characters. Just you put 2 of them in a room, you can think of something. And as you say, you want to hang out with them. Which I think is part of any sequential narrative. You mainly talk about comic books, but it's something we have in common there too. It's not even really the plot so much that pulls you. If it is the plot, eventually, if the plot goes bad, the audience turns on you. It's because they want to hang with the characters. You know, issue after issue, episode after episode, they want to be there with them. So that was what it came down to, starting from there. And then the world, everything around it, just started growing from Berit's and my own combined imaginations.
Yeah, a lot of little just sort of, you know, science facts that I had run across over the years. Like the whole thing about humans being stereotyped as obsessed with sex. I started thinking about, well, what's unusual about humans on Earth? And one of the things that is relatively unusual is that we don't go into heat, that we have a concealed ovulation period and are theoretically capable of mating year round. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe that's a thing that sets us apart on a galactic scale as well. So a lot of it is just little facts that I found interesting, that I found a way to apply and bring into the world.
Personal obsessions like the fairgrounds, because I've always been interested in World's Fairs and how they work and how they fail mostly. And
hubris is a big theme also.
Yeah, no, both of us.
The hubris of calling it the first annual Galactic Fair when you don't know there's going to be a second one. And there was not.
Yeah. You know, bureaucracy, hubris. I mean, these are huge themes, and we have, and a lot of them are just even stuff we've been dealing with thematically in theater for years in terms of corporations and propaganda and just creating a world that, you know, felt correct around these characters. Again, if you want to actually, I mean, I don't need to bring it back to comic books, but I do think of it that way. You know, it's about the figure versus the background as well. And a lot of what I think of what I do sonically is not that far off from a background artist on comics at times, that I have to create this world behind it that fits the characters that they're set against, that complements them, but also tells you about the world they live in without it necessarily being the text. I mean, a gold standard of that, which is an obvious one, DC comic, is Watchmen, in terms of what's going on in the background that Gibbons is doing, that Moore has put into the script. If you've ever read the scripts for Watchmen, incredible detail about the world, a lot of which is never spoken. It's never mentioned textually, but you understand this world behind it because of how much they've thought about it and thought about what would a world be like in which Dr. Manhattan was a real thing, in which there were superheroes. So they just thought about that. We think about that in terms of it started from John B. and Althaar. What if, when there's a human and there's this alien, an Iltorian, they're on a fairgrounds. And from there, every race, everything begins to expand from the characters until you have an entire galaxy that makes sense, because it has to make sense around these characters. That's how you think of the framing of it. And Berit and I we still, there's so much that won't get into the show, because sometimes it's just like one of us in the apartment throwing out to the other, do you think that on such and such a planet they'd have, and it's
I mean, we know the entire, all of the maneuverings that went into why Althaar ended up specifically on the fairgrounds. It's never going to be explained explicitly in the show because it doesn't need to be, but I have a very clear picture of the sequence of events leading up to that.
Yeah, we know. I mean, even something that's mentioned offhandedly, like the fact that the Mebsutan lava people got upset when they heard Dee and Stops playing Too Darn Hot in the bar at the fairgrounds, because there's no such thing to a Mebsutan lava person. As Too Darn Hot. But it wound up causing a giant religious schism on the home planet, and eventually a kind of horrible war. Often, which it's only very briefly mentioned, but we know all the details of what the hell happened on Mebsuta just because Dee sang Too Darn Hot. So yeah, we have, and sometimes literally, even just a good joke, well, can we do this joke? Well, how does that affect the universe? And the universe changes just because we wanted to do a joke. But it is extremely detailed and vast. Berit and I also, Berit in particular, I have a certain amount, but Berit has a heavy grounding in science fiction and fantasy literature, and certainly is very hard on bad world building, and always has been.
Although there are things we hand wave, like the gravity, artificial gravity, we hand wave. The simultaneous translators we hand wave. Yeah, it's alien technology, and it just works.
Right. No, that was, early on, it's one of those, you establish the rules of your world as well, science fiction wise. And that was, at the start when we were designing in our heads the fairground, I said, okay, well, does it turn to make gravity? And Bear's like, no, just get artificial gravity. I said,
also, because I thought the artificial gravity going wrong had
comic potential.
Yeah. That's always a factor. Would it be funny besides the science fiction basis? Right.
Yeah. Is it funnier this way? Yeah, that's actually, it's funny because a lot of it is world building around jokes. It's like, well, what would be funny? And then how do we make the universe make sense so we can have that funny thing happen?
I mean, the extensive exploration of robot labor issues really just came from the fact that I thought it would be funny to have a robot threatening to call their shop steward. That's turned into an entire exploration of the history of labor. Yeah.
It's a huge part of the show, which we didn't expect it to be. I mean, one of the great things also working in the form we do in this sitcom form and writing as you go, I mean, you kind of think well, wouldn't it be great to just sit back and write the whole season in advance? And then, but we discover things as we're going. We discover things with the actors and what they bring to it episode by episode that changes, if not the overall arc of the story, because we always knew how it was going to end. But it changes the little beats and the little moments within, because, again, we are writing mainly for character. We have a guide, which is the overall arc and story. But what's interesting to us are the characters being put through these situations episode by episode, beat by beat. So, and just making it, when I write it, I'm happy because it's just, I want to hang out with these people. I love writing, there's times when it's like, I'm in a mood to write John and HF today, or HF and someone else. And then you get caught up in I can get very caught up in HF's voice because Eli's voice is very distinctive that way. And I can just say, okay, what will be funny if Eli says it? How can I structure this line in a way that coming out of Eli's mouth, it will be especially funny? And that's how we think. So yeah, it has this, we love this world that we've created to a certain extent, and we look after it, and we just make sure it's very big and broad. Berit's the master of that early on, because through most of the company's history, I founded this company just myself in 1997. Berit and I wound up together in 2000, and it was my company. Then it was Berit's and my company, and it's always been about shows I'm directing and designing. It's been my theater company. And then Berit became very much a collaborator, assistant director, stage manager, etc. And when we started creating this a few years ago, when I was writing a big farce, I've written many plays, but this time I was writing a big farce, and I said, Berit, I need you to write this with me because it's just going to work and be funnier if we write this together, because I know the two of it. And Berit hadn't written and felt a little, I think, wasn't entirely happy about being dragged into it at the time.
I wasn't unhappy about it, but yeah, it was my first attempt at writing an entire play.
Yeah, but there were days when it was bad, when you're going, you don't have to put my name on this, Ian. I mean, you can just put your own name on it. But then when we started creating the world here, and again, I've always been the primary creator, producer, everything in the company, it was very clear that this was Berit's universe. We created it together, but Berit ultimately is the voice, the literal voice of Althaar, because Berit plays Althaar. But also, I can think of something and I know the world and I can create for it, but at the same time, it's something you put to Berit and say, does this work in the universe? And Berit has the yes or no.
Although I have been talked around on a few things.
Oh yeah,
by various of the writers. But yeah, it's I do have sort of an intuitive sense of what does and doesn't fit in the Althaar universe.
Yeah. So we all work with that. But Berit will go out of their way to fix the universe for a really good joke. So.
It's true. There are few lengths to which I will not go.
Yeah.
So how does casting work with this? I mean, because one of the things that I really love about this amazing writing, richly created world, but what brings this to life, this is where there's the magic, and actually there's the comic book link there, right? The best comics are the ones where there's a great writer, there's a great artist, characters that people love, a world that's been well imagined. This checks all the boxes of audio for me. It's I love the characters, I love the world, the story in itself pulled me in. So this is something where somebody could just narrate this and I would be intrigued because it could be an audiobook and I would enjoy the story. But what really nails it on this one is the fact that it is a full cast presentation. This is a full-blown production, sound effects, everything, and the cast is stellar. It's really important in this that you've got a cast that is able to bring to life, certainly in some cases, a number of characters in a way that you're transported in that moment. And I've got to say this for the cast. I always am amazed when I look over who's playing what characters and the fact that people have played multiple characters, and I'm like, no, they couldn't have been that character. And it really is, it's a testament to how you're putting this together, because I'm always pulled into the episode and I never hit that moment where I'm like, well, that's that person playing that, the same person that's playing this, playing that. Never have once felt that. I've totally been just taken into the world. How does casting work on this though? What point in time do you know this character is going to be that person? How does that work for this?
It varies. I mean, and often, what it really comes down to at the last minute, but again, it's the fact that we have this great theater company. There's 23 actors that we have a 25-person theater company, which 23 of us are the actors and others who make Althaar. And so we have this deep bench here. And we have 9 people, of course, who play main characters who appear in every episode. But they can occasionally double on other characters, of course. But then we have a whole bunch of other. I've played an insane amount of characters on the show. I was a little stunned to look on IMDb and see I had been like 70-something characters.
Well, because so often if we need like one line, we'll just have one of us, a character who only has one line, we'll just have one of us do it because it's just easier scheduling-wise.
Right.
So yes, the main characters, we're all very much written with the actors in mind because these are people that we've been working with for years and years.
Yeah. Actually, Eli was a bit of the exception in that because when we started creating the series, Eli, I don't think was even around. We hadn't even started. Had we started work on Harakiri Kane? I don't know if we had, or if we had done.
I don't know. I will. I was little. I'm Eli, by the way. I play HF on the show, and we had just done a play written by Dean called Harakiri Kane. I had one small scene in the beginning. I was brought in through a friend who knew Dean, and I had read the play with Ian in the play as a reading, but Ian and I didn't really speak. And then when they did a production, they needed someone to fill the character, which I had read, so I came in on it. And we did the play, and I had great fun, and it was in repertoire with another show that Ian wrote, and I watched, and I thought it was fantastic. And then they were talking about the next project, and the podcast was talked about. And I'm like, hey, guys, I'll do whatever you want, whatever voice. I'll be Spaceman number 2, whatever you need. And they come up and say, yeah, we want you to read HF. And I go, okay, who is that? They just kind of briefly explain it, and then they worked with the other 8 main characters much longer than they did with me. So I felt pretty honored once I got the first script that my character was who he was, and I didn't have a voice for him really to start. I went on the text on the page, and as we went along, episode to episode, I found his voice, and with me finding the physical voice, it enabled the writers to find a greater voice. So we kind of built on what my vocal tendencies are and my initial, hey, you can't do that here. Come on. And then to build on that, on my voice, and then they go, oh, I can say, and then they start hearing me saying it. And then they can write without being in a vacuum. They can write the basic, and it just built and built and built. And it's just been a great ride.
Yeah, no, the characters, and actually HF, the concept of the character, we got most of the characters literally in the first 90 minutes. We were brainstorming drunkenly on Metropolitan Avenue.
Tipsily. Okay.
That's how we often start a season, is Berit and I go out and we plan out, we go have a huge dinner and we get a little tipsy and we work out what exactly is going to happen episode by episode in the next season. But in the case of HF, we just knew that John would have a boss. And we were thinking about, well, which actor could it be? Could it be him? I mean, the other possibility, actually, Eli, I don't know if we ever said, was like that John's boss could be either Eli or it could be Phil. Phil was also in the play that we did. And it was like, well, if it's Eli, he kind of works as a character this way. And if he's Phil, then he's going to be just a bit more of like a hard-ass authoritarian, and I don't think it'll work in the ensemble. So that's why it went to Eli, was we knew that HF in Eli's hands would be this character you also liked and wanted to spend time with. If it had been Phil, it would have been Phil. Often, sometimes on the show, plays authoritarian or bureaucratic busybodies, and he would have been more like Bill Znaris in episode 5, who Phil plays, who's just got episode 6, who's got a stick up his butt. But we didn't want that. And then, yes, also things developed, like literally after 3 or 4 episodes, we did get one review from the writer Adam McGovern, and he also writes comic books, I think, or certainly writes about them a great deal. And I did a play of his once in the comic book festival, which was like a live comic book as well. But we made a couple of references to HF complaining about various ailments, which was just, at the time, it was more like, oh, he's just trying to get out of work by claiming he has something. And Adam in the review referred to him as a hypochondriac. And then we were like, well, that works. And so from then on, that just became a big part of HF, was his hypochondria.
HF would have diseases that he could not physically have because he does not have the organs that would be affected by that disease.
Yeah. And which is the kind of thing that you don't think about where the plot's going sometimes, but then you realize, that eventually HF becomes part of this underground resistance. And one of the other resistance people is a doctor we've met a few times, Dr. Mwangi, played by Leela Okafor. And suddenly it occurred to us when they're hanging out, oh my God.
If they were in a room together, HF is going to be pestering her constantly.
Oh, no.
About all his imaginary diseases. We got to put that in there.
Yeah. So that's exactly how you wind up thinking about, like, you just put two characters together and what's going to happen and give those
let their
characters
quirks bounce off each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Give them enough interesting personal quirks and everything. When it comes to casting the rest, it's funny with a lot of the characters who aren't repeated characters, it often really comes down to scheduling. It's because we try to record as much as we can every scene with as many of the actors present as we are right now on Zoom, looking at each other. They all record at home, so we get a better quality recording, and we sync it up, and they send me the tracks, and I edit them together later. But I want them, partially, maybe it's the theater background, I don't know. I really want them to be able to hear each other and play off each other, and sometimes do little ad-libs around each other. We want that give and take. So sometimes it's literally like, well, we have this scene that has 3 of the regulars and 3 new characters. And here's the day when the only time when we have the 3 regulars available. Which of our other actors are available to play the 3 other parts?
And we have a very versatile company, so we can get away with that. Yeah. Because...
So it's like, oh, so it's me, turning to Berit when I'm scheduling, going, okay, so to play this robot, we have Lex, or we have Amanda, or and we think about it a moment and then go, okay, that one's Amanda. That one's, we think about the score of the voices. And also, again, in terms of the overall score of the piece, sonically, where else that actor is playing somebody, so that they're not often, like, if they're playing one character in one scene, to try not to lead into them playing a different character at the start of the next scene. It happens plenty, but then sometimes also we wind up creating these what are meant to be one-shot characters that Berit or I or someone plays, and we fall in love with them, and they just become these recurring background people throughout, to the point that Berit played 3 different ones in the bar.
I think I was talking to 5 of myself at one point.
Yeah. And then a scene
out that way.
A scene naturally came where it was Berit talking to 4 other Berits in the bar, and it was just, we couldn't avoid it.
Yeah, most of my characters hang out in the bar a lot.
Yeah,
my little side characters. Yeah,
and sometimes it's like realizing, oh, Dee has to have a big scene with Ruti, the little annoying the sprout, the fascist sprout, and they're both played by Zuri Washington, and it was like, well, Zuri's going to handle that, and no one will know, and that they'll be able to have a 10-minute scene that's just Zuri talking to another Zuri, and it'll be great. So,
and of course, you use the Eventide harmonizer also to make some audio distinction between
I really rely. I have a lot of audio tricks and a lot of sound equipment, which I've been getting more and more of over the course of the show. New echo boxes.
Let me speak to that a little bit, to Ian's brilliance, because
Lord,
when we started, we all went to a studio in Midtown, and we all got mic'd up and had our music stands and scripts and did the scenes together in a room. Well, then the world turned upside down, and we had to stop production. And we didn't stop for too long. Ian and Berit were both on it, checking with everyone to see if they, what their recording capabilities were. I was at a level different than I had a particularly good mic. I had experience with Audacity, so I could record at home fairly easily. Other people were not that way, and they had to coordinate this, getting mics to everybody, making sure they have the right computer programs to set up, and then we set up these Zoom meetings, which started on Google Meets, and that didn't work out. Then we had to switch over to Zoom, and there was no drop in audio quality, and it was stunning to me that the quality of the noise of the sound was as good as it was in season 1, and that's just a testament to Ian's precision. And as far as I've played some other characters as well, and a couple times I hear the character and I went, wait, that sounds familiar. Who's playing that? And I went, wait a minute, I'm playing that character. Why don't I recognize me? Because he's put it through some harmonizer or something. And I go, I don't think that's me. Did he record someone else doing that? And I went, no, that's my take. So, so their brilliance in keeping the sound quality as good as it is, the rich oral quality. And Ian mentioned this group, the Firesign Theater. My favorite of them was the Nick Danger series of the Gumshoe, which is hilarious. And this show, my first listen to the episode, I was like, oh my God, it's like Firesign Theater. Nick Danger.
That's the gold standard, it's Fire Signs.
And the oral quality is the AURAL is so good. And through the pandemic, that they've kept it up and made sure everyone was getting the quality that they needed to make it work. And Berit's knowledge of the continuity of the fairgrounds is unmatched. How do I say this word? Well, in episode 2, it was said this way, and we're on episode 27. Okay, I'll say it your way.
No, yeah, keeping track of all that.
Amazing ride.
Yeah, no, it's and it was great that we were able to just go right into season 2 as planned, except not in a room together,
and have something to do while we were all in lockdown too. Like if we had just been doing theater before quarantine happened, we would have lost our minds probably.
Yeah.
So having this already in place was such a silver lining.
Yeah, and
have an outlet like this,
and then having been able to get everyone to learn how to record on their own at home. Some people are more technically adept than others. Some people get really frustrated, but teaching them either GarageBand or Audacity or Sound Studio, whichever program they interacted with best in order to do the work. That was, once they got it, it was one day we did a whole recording thing, and I just without saying anything was listening to these actors and looking at what we were doing, and we've got this whole system that's really bizarre but completely worked out, and we're all just treating it like it's the most natural thing on earth. That we do. Every take starts with me going 1, 2, 3, pop, and everyone else has to say pop at the same time as me as a slate, so that when I get the tracks, I line up the pops.
But it works, and it's actually been I think good for the performances too, because now that we're not all in a room together, we can, for example, make little background noises and responses to each other's lines,
right,
that we didn't really do as much before because we were worried about getting picked up on each other's mics.
Yeah,
but now since everyone's recording their own solo track, we have a lot more leeway.
Yeah, we were recording in just one room because we couldn't afford a real studio. We couldn't afford a real setup. And part of the idea when we began Althaar also was we have a bunch of sound equipment from our theater work. And we hadn't even used them yet, but when there were specials on lavalier mics, I had been buying up some lavalier mics to use in the theater because because I do so much sound, I actually wanted, even in a small space, the actors mic'd sometimes so I could have loud things with them talking, and I would be able to do live processing on the voices as well. We hadn't done that yet. But I just had a suitcase full of a mixing board and 10 lavalier mics and a lot of cable, and I had freeware programming. And I said, what can we do audio-wise that won't cost us anything with what's right here? because we got no money either. And it was, we can't afford a recording studio. Well, let's find the cheapest, quietest rehearsal room in Midtown Manhattan and bring everyone in and have them face different directions, into curtains at music stands and perform the piece together. But they're aware of each other physically and vocally. And
it was a little like the Blair Witch Project. Everyone facing the wall.
Yeah, it was
each other.
Yeah, that's exactly. It looked like a room full of everyone facing the corner, waiting for the Blair Witch, and everybody except everyone emoting furiously. And again, since it was wireless lavalier mics, they were able to stand there and really give a physical performance at the same time. And so I was, but then the fact that. But it was also difficult on the sound quality because I could only record 10 lavalier mics down onto a stereo track, which then I would have to edit into each individual character's own voice. It was a
before
nightmare.
applying the effects for all the alien or the robot characters or anything. So this being able to do this online has been
because now everyone sends me their tracks. They put them in a shared Google Drive folder, and they come in, and I just clean them up now. And I've got cleaning tools, and I know how to clean all the little problems because there are people who can't record. I mean, Eli records. We get great tracks from Eli, but at the same time, he's recording in a place that has a lot of traffic noise sometimes because you got nothing but windows right in front of you.
Yeah,
right?
My apartment is all windows on the street, and we get dogs, and we do a take, and Ian goes, "All right, who had the dogs?" And I raised my hand. That was me with the dogs outside.
Yeah.
There was one day we were recording. We were recording 3 different people in 3 different boroughs, and they all had incredibly loud motorcycles going on outside, it was some kind of citywide convention.
People in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, all with the motorcycles outside their windows. But then there's also John Amir, who plays John B., who's out in Chicago now. And the place where he records, we get nice tracks from him, but he's got a refrigerator he can't do anything about that's going to be humming through every moment he records. And so,
although a steady hum is easier to get rid of, right? Than intermittent noise.
Now it is. It is. Now I have. I bought a little plug-in for that one, but So that's what we work with. It's interesting, and now we do also work all over the place, and we
also have Lexus now out in LA, so we're
two of our writers and actors moved away from New York before season 2, so also doing it this way on the Zoom, they're part of the community and they're working, and we can all sit here in New York and watch Lex out on a beautiful porch in Los Angeles on a sunny day,
in the sun,
recording her lines as Bubbles while we're elsewhere under gray skies. But also people have recorded when they've been on vacation or had to take family trips, so it's like, oh, you're in Vermont today and someone's in so working this way, we even when it might have been possible to get back together, and I'm glad we didn't try that too early, because there have been some problems with that in New York on occasion. But I'm glad we kept doing it for season 3 because the work really comes together nicely. The actors do good work together this way.
So much got disrupted during the pandemic, and my love for audio productions got reignited during the pandemic. I think it was a matter of just looking for something new and revisiting something I think that I hadn't been exposed to in a long time. So it was something that I really reconnected with. So then when I was exposed to this, I was so excited because I was already really back into audio again. And I'm like, this is something so different than what I'm listening to right now. And yet, to your point about it being a sitcom and yes, it has all of those qualities, but it's something so unique because I grew up loving science fiction and being able to read these fantastic, fun stories that really could go anywhere and do anything. And the best sci-fi is the one where the characters are 3-dimensional and fully developed, where you start to forget that they're aliens. because, and they are, because there's things that'll happen in the story that like just remind you real quick, oh yeah, but you get so comfortable with them that you start to forget that. There's that suspension of this is normal. It just starts to become normal until it's not. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, that's part of the secret of world building with the whole thing, is to just treat it like this is the world, and it just is. Samuel R. Delany, Chip Delany, has written a lot about world building and is one of my favorite writers. And I take a lot of his lessons to heart when he talks about, how do you deal with, world building? You just write a character who walks into a room, turns on the light, and sits down in a chair. And if you describe just even the physical action of how a light switch or how a chair feels, how a light switch works, they're not going to be our worlds. If you're, so you don't have to go into it in great detail, but just like describing how a character interacts with everything around them and being true to that world, you're going to have this huge, rich thing. And I have a certain background in particularly the new wave era of sci-fi, 60s and 70s. Berit much more after that and beyond, but
cyberpunk 90s was
right.
My big era. Yeah.
So we have this, we do have a grounding, and there are lots of little teeny references to SF of the past.
Oh, there's so many. It is very, very dense. Yeah.
Through. It's always, how can we mention, getting in a little Larry Niven reference here, or a little, here's a little Asimov-y thing or something.
Yeah. One of our writers, Phil Cruz, we spoke of him earlier. He is one of the bigger Star Wars fans out there. I know, Sean, you like Star Wars. There was a couple of references to Star Wars. Anyone who heard it would know how blatant it was in one of our more recent episodes. So when they come up and people find them, and people hear them, it's really gratifying to hear back from people. Oh, that was the thing you meant to talk about that thing.
But that also becomes part of this whole lattice of connections and references and all of this history we have going into it. That the reference Eli's actually specifically even talking about came because we were working on a script of Linus Gelber's, but it needed this additional voiceover bit. And Berit said, can you write something like that that's like out of George Lucas's THX 1138, which also is a huge sonic influence on me. It's one of my favorite movies, and it was one of the first really great sound designed by Walter Murch, who later, of course, did Apocalypse Now and The Conversation. But THX is this amazing sonic world of voices all around you. And even when Lucas went and made Star Wars, that happens again. You hear it in the voices on the Death Star and the cockpit voices. He was very much into these radio voices and distortions. And so I was just writing one of these, and I just wrote down, PK 12. Now I can't even remember the number. It was so natural. PK 421. Right. And in Star Wars, it's TK 421. It's the stormtrooper that Luke has taken the place of when they come in impersonating on the Death Star. But it's TK 421. But in my head it went PK, and I was like, oh, I got to change that. And I was like, no, I don't. It's
it's a reference.
It's part of this
Easter egg.
It's part of this Lucas thing. I was reaching for THX and I got Star Wars and whatever. It's our little tribute to Lucas in that moment.
We will eventually be publishing the fully annotated scripts of all the episodes, and there's going to be some very, very dense footnotage on that.
Yeah. Because it is, like with a lot of the theater I've been doing for years, it is about trying to bring in all of these elements of things that and the collision of Gemini Collision Works to try and bring together all of these arts from different areas, so that even if we're making a piece that is purely theater, yes, my knowledge of science fiction novels, my love of film, my love of comic books all come in some way. I would say one of the other big influences on this show in terms of an audio thing, from a purely visual thing like comic books, would be the early Mad Harvey Kurtzman books and Bill Elder's artwork. on those, and the whole way that the frame is used with background gags and these tight, and it's what is the audio equivalent of that when you have what Bill Elder, when he was doing Mad, called the chicken fat school of art, which is, just, it had all this, schmaltz, just stuff in it, like the way chicken fat sits on top of soup. You want to have all of that taste there. And so it's how much stuff in the background can I put in? And it's not to show off. It's not to make look at how, huge this sound is. It's always about supporting the characters and making the world they're in a very real place. To feel lived in. And while at the same time also being one where the jokes work. Because that was always the start of it. It has to be funny. And then, Berit always jokes, I'm the one who writes the shows that make people cry. I'm the one who writes the episodes that tear people's hearts out. And Berit said, I just wanted to make Uranus jokes. So, which we did get to do.
But we do both, yeah.
Yeah, it is a mix of all kinds of elements of high and low. But yeah, it's in the same way that our plays try to combine all these elements of many different arts. When we went to audio, it was the same thing. It's that we've got, it is a sitcom, but it's also in some ways a 40-episode science fiction novel that's told in comic chapters, but there is an overall story there. And yeah, it is, as you said, about first introducing you to the characters. And we knew we would take our time with that before some of the heavier stuff came in. The show's basically in 4 movements over 3 seasons, and the first one is about the characters, and the second one is about the lead into the big event that takes over a good deal of seasons 2 and 3. And then the final part will be when the event is settled and the coda of everything and letting go. So, which is going to be hard. It's hitting the point now where we've been doing, Berit and I have been working on this since July 2017. Wow. And we're now we're going to be saying goodbye to these characters very soon. And that's very hard.
How many productions, though, don't get to do that? It's, there's so many stories out there, and as a sci-fi fan, as a fiction fan in general, how many times have we been left hanging? And left hanging with things we truly love. Like, I'll go back and rewatch again things that didn't get finished, but you knew they could have. There's that bittersweet piece, but we're going to get the conclusion. We're going to get to hear the whole story. We're going to get to go on that journey with you and with these characters and see it through till the end. And that part is so great, because when it happens, we all know it. These things that we love, when they end, it's sad, but also satisfying, because then you want to go back and listen again, and you want to go back and experience it again. And to me, I've as I've gotten older, one of the things I've come to appreciate is something that I appreciated so much in my childhood. It is revisiting things that second time through, knowing what was coming and seeing the seeds that were planted along the way. The things that you missed, because you inevitably do, you miss it the first time around. And it's that second time when you go back through and you know what's coming, that you get to see the little details that were there all along, guiding you through and appreciate it in a different way.
And maybe it's because Berit and I are fans of that kind of stuff, as well as being creators. We made sure to put that kind of stuff in. We knew. We were the kind of fans that didn't want to start a story and not give it a satisfying conclusion. So before we even really started, we knew where it was ending, and it was we knew how that was going to come about. We didn't know if it was going to be 3 years. We didn't know if it was going to be 5 years. We knew where the ending was, and we waited until after season 1, and we had kind of an idea of what the form was, to figure out, well, how many episodes is it going to take us to get to that end of the story now? And we said, okay, it's 3 seasons. It's not 4. It's not 5. It's 3. With an extra episode in season 3 to make it all work out. But and then again, also, since we knew where the ending was and we knew the major plot points, we've been working towards them since day one in the first episode.
So we were able to seed things that, so to speak, that did pay off later on.
Yeah, we've had listeners come back who, like, when big twists happen later, said they went back and listened from the start. Was like, oh, you were laying that in from episode 1. It was like, yes, we were.
It was weird. We were being too obvious with some of this stuff, but I guess we hit the sweet spot on most of it.
Yeah, we hit the sweet spot because I was worried about being obvious, but then I said, we were trying to be subtle about it. It's like, but now when I go back and listen, it's like hitting you in the face with a fish. It's not subtle. It was there from moment 1. Yes, it was.
Or a banana. Or a banana.
A banana. Althaar and the banana,
yellow
which we just
delicious.
Brought back.
And full of potassium, yes.
Just brought back in the last episode again after a long time away. And once again, it's become Althaar's avatar on Twitter. So, because Althaar does have a lovely Twitter account, Althaar Tweeting. Where,
Althaar
I didn't know that.
Responding.
We have both the Life with Althaar Twitter and which I manage, and then Berit edits Althaar's thoughts.
That is my sole social media presence. Actually, is Althaar's Twitter account. But I run in character. Yeah, there's actually someone who tweets as an ancient Sumerian scribe, and so we will have these conversations across several millennia between him and Althaar.
Yeah. I think he may have gotten into it because we named one system after some Sumerian.
There is one human system that's all got planets named after Sumerian gods. Which is again not really pointed out, but it is the kind of world building detail I maybe spend too much time on.
I don't know. It's not too much time. It drives us nuts sometimes, that the world building, because also. I did even say recently to Berit, because Berit is the keeper of the world, and you can't, you have to go by what Berit says is Althaar or not Althaar. And sometimes that means you're in a plot situation where you can't just use a standard plot trope because it doesn't work in this world. Berit has made sure it doesn't work in this world. So you're kind of caught in a Kobayashi Maru, as I say.
I mean, I do that to myself. I get caught up in those things too. It's like, oh, it would be so much simpler if they could just do this, but they can't just do that because that's not how that species thinks.
No. Besides, looking at all the TV shows and what they do that we love, we also looked at, well, what are ones that what are tropes we don't like so much in TV that we want to avoid? So the as you know scene, that's Berit and I, that's always been a bugbear of ours, even if we love it.
We're very self-conscious about not having long explanations of things that the people having them explained to would know, already know about. Which I think is part of why a lot of the details and everything were sort of gradually introduced, is because we needed to find a way for them to come up organically rather than just shoehorning them in.
And as you noted, a character like Eli's character, like HF at the start, was important for that as well, as being a guide to our main character, someone who's been around and knows.
He's a human, but he's a man of the galaxy. He's much more cosmopolitan than John is. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask him questions. Not because I knew I was going to get not necessarily the answer I was looking for, but his version of what that answer was going to be. And that was part of the fun of that journey, was the fact that I every time John B would ask him something, or something would lead to some communication with him, it was like, okay, how's he going to answer this?
He definitely has his own very strong perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to miss writing these characters because I love when they surprise me as well when I'm writing. There's an exchange coming up in the next episode between HF and Stella that just, I didn't see it coming. And HF suddenly said something fairly funny, and Stella has a giant wow, reaction to it. Basically HF drops a really disturbing piece of information, and Stella's like, what? When are you going to leave there?
Yeah.
When? How are you going to tell? When are you going to tell me about that? I was going to try and find a way to make it less disturbing. How?
It's an intrinsically disturbing piece of information. There was no way that was going to happen.
There's no way, but it's HF, so he's going to try and find a way to not drop this incredibly disturbing piece of information. So, I love when they surprise me, and I love writing Frawl and the Commander. Like, just again, this next episode, which I did the basic writing on, Berit rewrites everything. I mean, we have good writers. We have like 8, there's 7 other writers on the show besides Berit. I do a lot of it, and I do a lot of the overall structure of the season. And the other writers are great, and they've got the world down too, and they've contributed greatly to the world as well. Because a lot of the things we've wound up world building around was a writer bringing something in. And it was like, well, I don't know how that would work in the Althaar universe. Well, how do we make it work in the Althaar? And the whole universe shifts because of it. But in this last script I was writing, it's mostly 2-person conversations, and I love just getting to that where it's like, okay, now I have HF and Stella, now I have Dee and Stops, now I have Thrall and Toriana. I can just like have these moments where I just pair off 2 characters I love writing and just let them chat for a while. And stuff's gonna, because they are who they are, jokes are gonna happen. I'm not gonna see coming until they're out of their mouths, literally, while I'm writing, because that's just what the characters do.
I was going to say, I just wanted to compliment all of you because Sean started on this from the very beginning. I literally came in at the end because Sean's like, hey, we're going to be doing this. It sounded really neat. So I figured I'd listen to an episode. So I'm listening at the end, right now, just trying to get a groove and a view, kind of get an understanding of this. And I will admit, when I'm first going, I think, oh, who's that? Who's that? But the story kept going on. I was like, this is cool. This is neat. And I didn't know who all the different people were. And you guys did a great way of explaining it within the context of the story. So it wasn't like the
try.
Fish, it wasn't the fish slap in the face, but even an idiot like me could follow it and could understand it. So you guys did a brilliant job with just painting the picture. And I came in on with the episode with Drew. That was
wow. That's your first episode.
Oh my god,
that's a hell of it. That's a hell of an episode.
You won't get whiplash if you go back to episode 1 straight from that. Wow.
Well, yeah. I have to now. That's how
Please do.
This series. That's how good this series is. I'm like, I must now go back to. I've got to go back to episode 1. Well, I've got to listen to all of this now.
It's a little.
You guys did a fabulous job with this universe.
Thank you. It's a little rougher at the start because again we were still learning and the voices took a while to work out. I mean, it's funny as Sean says that yes, Althaar. There are people who try to listen to the show and Althaar's voice is immediately a turn off. That's it. They're not going to go any further. And then
we did gradually get the kinks worked out over the course of the first season to make him grating but not intolerable.
Because he has to still have the quality of that. You have to believe that his voice will seriously upset any human around him. Just the sound of his voice will just do it. And Berit's original version before we even started recording was really grating.
It was much raspier, and I was just like, that is not going to be sustainable long term. So I just decided to go, high pitched and incredibly over enthusiastic, but let Ian add the rasp and the gratiness to it afterwards.
Berit did basically say, "Can you do the rasp digitally so I don't kill my
tear my throat to shreds?" Yeah.
But it was funny when we had our first listening party. It was Dean Haspiel who said that, and I actually took this a little subliminally into account. He said, I couldn't understand anything Althaar said at the start of the episode because we did this and we had 2 nice but not great speakers that we were playing it in a room at a party. And especially at the start, I really designed Althaar for headphone listening, not speaker listening. And, Althaar was really hard to understand over speakers. But Dean said, was it deliberate that he got easier to understand over the course of the episode? Did you do anything? And I was like, no, I didn't actually do anything to the voice, but it did make me consider, and maybe subliminally over the course of the first season, as I did slowly change Althaar's voice, that the idea on a certain level was that the audience was getting to know him, and as a result, you got to understand him better. And that was the idea of it. It
totally worked. Because that was my experience. It was, as I was getting to know, because in the first episode, you kind of got to feel like John B does, where you're getting a little sick along the way with him. And I mean, you really had that experience. But then John B was talking about how nice and you felt, because John for me in the beginning was my gateway. So
absolutely, that's how we
exactly what it was.
Yeah, he's
that's
very much a viewpoint character for the audience. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I really felt like the way that it was balanced in the first episode, I was feeling the uneasiness that John was. And second episode, it starts to ease in. And, in third episode, they're talking about becoming real friends. And John's, there's mating rituals and all kinds of stuff like that they're talking about as well. But it was so great that, like, their relationship was gradually progressing. I'm realizing that the audio was also adjusting during that time and actually... Yes, he was still the same character, but my relationship with the character was also becoming much different, much more. I really found myself like starting to like him.
We all it sort of was a simultaneous learning process where, Althaar was learning about humans and Ian was learning about how to process Althaar in an effective way. And I think I was learning more about how to adjust my performance to make it more intelligible at the same time.
Yeah, it was all of those elements, happening at once. And because it is, discovering all of this, and the first season is about discovering it. And and about that friendship as well. It does open up. That's the one thing also at the core of the entire series. And it goes into all of these huge areas and all of these species, all of these races. But at the core of it, it's about the friendship between John B and Althaar. That's something, like, we always remind the writers, we always tell everyone, is remember at the heart of it, it's about John B and Althaar. And it's about friendship. I mean, it's about, in a larger sense, about community. It's about community and friendship, the show, and how important that is, especially in dark and awful times, and about how people come together to work together to, overcome evil, which is what the characters wind up going up against, no question, by that point. But it's about these characters who are basically decent people. All of the 8 of the 9 main characters. Mrs. Frondranax is not. Sorry to
not too many spoilers, but she does not think the way we do. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I don't like. I try to avoid spoilers, but at the same time, the thing with Althaar is not so much what happens, but how it happens. I feel like we can tell you an incident that's going to happen. I don't have any problem telling anyone that basically the series, of course, has a happy ending for everyone, because that's the kind of series it is.
It's a comedy, yes.
It's a comedy.
We're not going to kill off any of the main characters.
No. But how it gets to that ending is what's important. And that you've had this journey for 3 years, 3 seasons that's gotten you to that point, so that it's deserved, and you understand why everyone makes the decisions they do at the end of the show. And my God, James, if you're going back to, let's start from the beginning, it is going to be weird because it'll sound in some ways like a completely different show, but except not. It's still the same people. It's still the same thought.
And it's still the same fairgrounds, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that we expanded a lot of the, once we introduced things, it allowed us to go more sideways with the emotional content of the show and how wide we could spread things. I mean, there were episodes in this season and in the second season that were some of the first things I, came up with once we had the idea for the series. But I also knew that's not a first season idea. That won't work until we've at least established the characters for a season and a half or 2 seasons. There's lines coming up in season 3 that I've been waiting to write for 4 years almost. I've been waiting for this moment when someone turns around and says this line, because I've been waiting for that plot moment to come up finally. And so
you have to earn it. You have to build up to it.
Yeah. At the same time, technically, I am a little, I'm proud of the first episodes and the learning curve we went on. But I am actually, once the series is done, going to go back and do a remaster of at least the first 10 episodes, just to make them a little easier on the ears, and also to make them match the whole series a bit more. Because at a certain point, I really got down, okay, this is the Frontenac's voice exactly. This is Althaar. I really knew exactly how to do everything. So I do want to go back to the start and build it up from the beginning, because and luckily we have a really great worldwide fan base, and we just had.
Oh, they're lovely. Yes.
Oh my God, we have wonderful fans all over the world who do art and send. I mean, we said, even Berit and I, before we even recorded an episode, I think it was like, we could have fan art. And that was like, oh my God, if we're in a position where people are doing fan art of our show, whoa.
You can have fan art of Althaar, and that's courage.
Yeah. But yeah, but I also see our fans sometimes when they're trying on our audio drama on Reddit, to say the show's really good, but you're going to have to get used to some of it for a few episodes, stick with it. If Althaar's voice is a deal breaker, just give it a few episodes, and I'm glad to see that our fans will make that point. It's
but it would be nice if, people did not have to suffer quite so much. We do want to bring the early episodes up to the quality of the later ones at some point.
Yeah, especially because now, there were things I was doing, again, since it was, I had very few digital tools when the show started, so I was really just doing these kind of insane kludges out of various EQs and filters to clean things up. And it was, I've been playing with sound. I've done some of it professionally over the years, but, since I was a small child, I've played with tape recorders and also messed with them to see what bizarre sounds I could get out of them by partially destroying them. But so I was interested in sound processing always, and, did things but I've also come really out of an analog world, and I think part of the world of what makes Althaar's sound design distinctive in that way is I still think in terms of classic analog sound and mixing that way. And I do little tricks that are a digital approximation of things you would physically be doing with tape in the analog world that people don't think about because there aren't digital effects that do that or that do it properly. So, I think about, well, what did George Martin and Jeff Emmerich do with the Beatles on Revolver at this point? How did they make those sounds on Tomorrow Never Knows? Well, okay, I know how they did it. How do I do that? When Stops has the hallucination, how do I make it sound like those bizarre tape echoes that are all over that Beatles song? So
I also love peanut butter. I'm just saying.
Oh, well. It's funny. It did work out. That was one of, and one of the reasons Berit is in charge of this is occasionally there are ideas where I go, oh, I don't know. Because we were saying Stops is a junkie, but it's something
super innocuous. Yeah. And peanut butter was really a placeholder. I was just it's some super common human food like peanut butter. And that just sort of sat there as a placeholder for a while. And
I was the one who kept there's got to be something that's funnier or better than peanut butter. Come on. And Berit was like, no, I think peanut butter is the good one. I think that's the one. And I was like, oh, okay. And Berit's, always generally proved right.
There is nothing better than peanut butter. It worked.
And it was because once you go into it, then you wind up being able to have all kinds of words and uses around peanut butter and peanuts and legumes and
fluffernutters.
Fluffernut. Yeah, it was
Snickers.
perfect for. The Snickers.
Yeah, I think we've referenced every single kind of. I think I have a window open right now with a list of candy bars that have peanuts in them.
Yeah, Berit has
my 500 little reference windows along with insect anatomy and plant anatomy and
and star systems. Yeah, Berit has an insane number of tabs open to reference stuff. So I open those for language things because I do things like write characters that speak in obscure, weird English dialects or something. So I'm interested in playing with the words and the language. So yeah, the next episode, I keep worried that it's going to be half unintelligible because it's two of our plants who talk in this Cockney English
Polari hybrid,
this gangster slang that sounds like Clockwork Orange too. So it's like, oh Lord, I'm trying to make it intelligible to the audience. But
I also have spent the past week tweaking John's responses to them so that, like, even if you can't understand a single word that they're saying,
right,
you can gather it from context cues. Which this is
how it works. This week it's been me finishing a script that's way behind, and Berit leaving every day to go rewrite whatever I've just done to go to the library or a coffee shop. And I'm working at home and sending, okay, I've got another scene, and Berit rewrites it. Yeah, it's a real fast little mom and pop operation here, so to speak. But we also have this amazing. I mean, Eli. Again, I'm so glad we got Eli in this. But I can't imagine any of these characters not with the voices they have. Yeah. Just the joy of writing for these voices, and a lot of the actors we've worked with for many years. Alyssa Simon, who plays Lieutenant Frall, who's one of my dearest friends and closest collaborators. We've been working on stage together. I've been directing her in shows for 15 years. Although I was even surprised today, I was looking at some old photos that came up in my Facebook memories. I was like, oh, this was when this show opened back in whatever year. And I was like, wait a minute, Anna Stefanik? I've been working with Anna for 10 years, who plays Stella, John's girlfriend, and also did all of the music for the show. Anna's a professional piano player. The theme, she composed and performed the theme music and plays piano. It's like, wait, because to me, Anna's this little girl.
She's one of the younger members of the company. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have members of the company from their mid-20s up into the 70s. So we have a wide range as well, age-wise, that we're able to use and move around in. But I still think of the younger members of the company as being younger than they are, and then realizing I've been working with them for 10 years, and they're either at or in their 30s now. And because yes, our youngest members of the company are certainly just old enough to be our children. So we're a little older than your average audio drama creator too. There's some out there, but it's still mostly young people. But it's nice. And what you were saying, actually, I was thinking of that earlier when you were talking about during the pandemic, how you turned to audio. A lot of people did. I can tell you, as someone who has to follow the numbers on my own show and has to follow the whole industry, basically, that it just exploded in terms of listenership in a lot of ways when the lockdown came. Because still, in terms of podcasts, audio drama is this tiny little part that gets a tiny little listenership of podcasts, which is why I'm glad to be here talking to you, because this is the kind of thing more people listen to. But it's true. And even us as even though we're apparently, according to the numbers, in the top 3% of listened to podcasts in the world, that's 96,000 podcasts. And that's still, we've really only got about 500 regular listeners. But our shows, but it increases constantly. This past month, and I have to do the numbers. Thursday night is when I check all of the numbers on how our show is done for the past week on the various sites where I get the numbers from. But
we are somewhat niche in that we are a show that sort of demands a bigger percentage of your attention than a lot of what people turn to podcasts for, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But audio dramas, just like you said, it has exploded. I personally have auditioned for other audio dramas.
Oh yeah,
this past year for union jobs, and so much is coming out. DC and Marvel have committed a lot of resources to audio drama. I just finished listening to the Batman audio series on HBO Max, which was incredible. Yep. I know people who've created their own from theater companies. They've had to create an audio theater company. I just listened recently to the Marvel. They did an audio drama of Kurt Busiek's Marvels series that I was listening, and a friend of mine was in it. So, which I was like, hey, wow, he's in I Only Bolt. So I don't know. Hopefully that means that more people are coming to audio dramas because the bigger boys are coming in, and that shows like ours won't get pushed out. And like the bigger boat will accommodate more people. But the medium is just it gotten so big just in the last 3-4 months.
Oh yeah, no, just today, in fact, because one of the places I look at many times a day is the Reddit, our audio drama. And today they just reached 150,000 subscribers, and it went up. It was 120 at the start of the year, and like he had the numbers. It like in the last year, you just see these jumps every month of 10,000, just more and more people coming to audio drama, and which is great. And it's also a number of prior to us working in the forum, there were some of our colleagues in theater who were already doing it. Mac Rogers, who's a wonderful writer, who's written a lot of science fiction, who we've worked with. Berit's designed shows for Mac. I've designed shows for Mac, I think. Theater shows, his stage work. But Mac, he's the big Doctor Who fan. You were remarking about Mac knows Doctor Who back and forth. But he and his company, Gideon Media, are doing a number of wonderful shows. My friend Edward Einhorn did 2 audio plays based on stage plays of his, but he really rethought them and reconfigured them for the audio form. And I sound designed one of those, The Iron Heel. So it is out there and it's happening. One of the big concerns, though, is what Eli was saying is the big boys are coming in some ways, and there's good work happening, and there's good work happening with a lot of money behind it too. I mean, that doesn't mean it's bad just because it's a big corporate thing sometimes, but there's a lot of concern in the smaller indie community as to how much it will push us out. The thing is, you can't be pushed out too much because it's not like you're getting pushed off a network. You have a microphone, you have the software, you have the platform to upload it to. You're out there and you can reach people. And word of mouth, like if you looked at the numbers that I'm going to be looking at soon tonight, we did just have the best month of listenership in the history of Althaar. And it is like this slowly rising curve, like here's first season, second season rises a bit. And then between first and second season, there's this rise. And then the third season starts and whammo, it leaps up. We just broke 4,000 listens for the first time in a month with this past month. And that's exactly the kind of thing we were hoping for, because, we're coming from the world of off Broadway, where you run for a few weeks, and by the time there's the start of any kind of word of mouth, it's time for you to close. So it's very gratifying to just have the work out there and accessible and be able to build that audience that way. And the fact that you have a worldwide audience as well, that I've been corresponding a couple of times with a listener in India who was interested in some of the philosophical aspects of the show. We have all of these beautiful people who read things into the show, and that we feel obliged to as well now to make sure that this comes out. We did just take our first break, which we didn't intend to do, but we got behind, and it was, looking at each other and saying we could stay on schedule, but our quality would go down. We can't do that at this point. We can't do that at this point. And other shows, I was a bit of a whip cracker on that, because I have that kind of, still the theater mentality of, you have an opening night, you're on stage opening night. It doesn't matter if you're ready or not. The audience is out there and you're going to do the show. I had to get over that to take that one break, because I'm the one who's like, no, schedule, because I do see other shows that vanish sometimes. There are some great audio dramas that wound up just stopping because the creators, there were issues, other things happened, and we just wanted to make sure that Althaar went all the way to the ending as good as we could make it the whole time.
Do you see yourself doing something audio-wise after?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I want more.
Well, whatever it is.
Well, we were originally planning to do weekly, where it was every other week Althaar, and then in the intervening weeks, this piece called the Chicky West Enigmas. But it just turned out to be too much to put out an entire show every week. We figured that out very early on in the process.
We did not know how. I mean, granted, I think even Berit has come to be happy making Althaar, I hope. But there was one point during the first season, Berit, where I turned to you and said, if you'd known how much work this was going to be for you.
Oh, I would never have embarked on it if I had known how much work it was. This was just going to be a little, it was supposed to be this little lark that we did to promote the theater company, and it is consumed my life. But I mean, I would not change a thing now. But yeah, if I had known in the beginning, no, I would not have embarked on it.
But we fell in love so much with the whole thing that we were creating that we had to just keep going. As Berit said at that point, I should have known we couldn't half-ass it. We have to whole-ass everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just kept going. But we are going to make something after this. The Chicky West Enigmas is a possibility, which is the story of a 30s dame detective.
Fast-talking dame reporter.
Fast-talking dame reporter.
Although it is much more surreal and abstract. Probably, I hope fans of Althaar will enjoy them, but probably anything we do after this will be much more surreal and abstract, because that is much more our usual workspace.
Yeah, is much more of a shifting. So, but it is that kind of comedy where Chicky West, who's a character who's shown up in 2 of my plays, once played by Amanda La Pergola, who's our Mrs. Frontenac. The last time Chicky appeared, she was also in when I did a play that was like an old Republic movie serial that was called Spacemen from Space. So it was like 6 chapters, one after the other, including going back and doing the cliffhangers and everything.
And we basically threw in every possible archetype that showed up in one of those old serials. So we had like a science hero and a cowboy hero and a FBI G-man and and then the fast-talking dame reporter.
And I just fell in love with writing for a fast-talking dame reporter. So I wanted to do more with Chicky West, because you look, especially Glenda Farrell played it a lot. She particularly played a character called Torchy Blaine in a series of 30s movies. But she played newspaper women in like 3 other movies, Mystery of the Wax Museum with Lionel Atwill. And I just love that archetype. And I wanted to set this like really straightforward 30s dame reporter down in a completely weird metaphysical mystery world of mysteries that cannot actually be solved in literal terms, and just have her trying to use her newspaper style to figure out the secrets of the universe in some way. And that was the Chicky West Enigmas. And I think we did record, Berit and I, the first ones, they were just going to be only Berit and I, and they were only going to be 15 minutes long, rigidly. But now I had a bit of an idea that the 15-minute episodes that I originally was working on might be the Chicky West prologues, and the Chicky West Enigmas will become a real series of like maybe 30, 35 episodes. And yeah, by the way, Eli, I think you're the editor at her paper. Just so you know, like when Chicky comes
I can't print that. I need a source. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Chicky, damn. I told you not to. And John Amir plays John B. is going to be her faithful photographer. I got it if I get Miss West. And so I'm already thinking about all the characters and who the actors are who are going to come back from Althaar, and what archetypal kind of 30s. And I've done a lot of noir work as well in theater. Film noir is one of my big passions. And so working in the noir genre is something, so it'll be a melange of that kind of genre stuff, very black and white, very different from Althaar. But at the same time, we're still looking for some of those bits, like, I think I got some of it, what it's about. That is, in some ways, why is this an audio drama and not something else? Why is it not a play? Why is it not what makes this specific to audio? And I think I finally got a handle on why it is, which is also something that's going to be a complete secret from the audience and may never even be revealed or worked out. But it makes me understand why I have to do this show as an audio piece. So yeah, that's the plan. But once Althaar is done, I'm hoping to do a stage production late next year to get back. If everything is still, even stage today is still. Berit just was on a gig last week, 2 weeks ago.
It was supposed to be my first gig back, basically, as a theater technician, and everyone in the cast was vaccinated, and then we had some breakthrough infections, and we had to call it off. So
yeah, and then we had to stay locked down for 4 days until Berit could get a test, and so we're being pretty cautious, but we do have the audio. And I'm glad we do, because we can keep working this way. I'm also, frankly, I'm disabled. So movement is more and more of an issue for me. I have a very bad arthritic condition. So that's been easier in some ways for me is, a lot of it I just do right here sitting on the bed where I can function. Because, walking is not a big thing for me these days. So, audio is definitely always going to be a big part of our future. It's just always that thing of where do we get the ideas, because always, you want the proper idea to work on it. I've been wanting to do something in horror for years because I'm a horror fanatic. Wow. And I've only ever really had one good horror idea. And I wrote a good 10-minute play on it. But it drives me nuts that I would love to direct horror or do something in the genre, and I'm not happy with any of the ideas that come. They're not satisfying enough. I'm just going to wait until one day it shows up. But I wait a long time. I've waited. I've had projects that I've had sit for 20 years until they got realized. So I play the long game. As Alyssa likes to say, Alyssa Simon, the actress, as I said, we've worked together for 15 years, and we expect to be working together when we're in another 3 decades, if we're both still around. I may be in a wheelchair, but I don't know. But Alyssa, always looks at me and says, Ian, we're in it for the long haul. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are, Alyssa. We're always going to be doing this, you and I. So, and some of that is going to be audio from now on as well.
One of the things I've got to say that's the most sincere compliment, it's funny, my exposure to you is through the audio, but as you're talking about productions and being able to do, I'm like, I want to see one. So, I mean, it's, and I think that's a nice synergy where it's, it's a different way to, part of your purpose here was to reach a new audience or reach a different audience. And, we live in Cleveland, and we have a great theater district here.
Oh, you do. You do. I know.
And it's, one of the things with the pandemic, I had tickets to multiple shows that I've got a credit waiting for because of the fact that, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, they didn't, come to fruition. And they were like, do you want a refund? I'm like, no. This is going to open up again eventually. I want to go back. So just hold on to that money. Let's just do that. But as you're talking about opening up a show, I'm like, I can't wait to see when. I'm looking to travel. I really would like to see. I really don't say that lightly. I would like to see something. One thing we didn't mention on this that I want to make sure that we do get in for our audience is how do they listen to? Okay, because we haven't really talked about that. I think it's critical.
Yeah, it's the thing is if you really Google Life with Althaar, although how do you spell Althaar? Althaar. But and this is what's one thing that's terrific about doing audio drama is if you get it out there and you get your RSS feed out, you can wind up having it listened to everywhere. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Podcasts. It's literally, I believe, I've not been able to find a podcast platform it isn't on. So, and if
it's on YouTube,
SoundCloud. I also, if you go to www.lifewithalthar.com, it actually takes you to the Gemini Collision Works homepage, and then there's an immediate link you'll see that goes to the Life with Althaar page, which is still under construction. But what is there is every possible link to where you can listen to it, different playlists, because I have separate SoundCloud playlists for seasons 1, 2, and 3, and separate YouTube playlists for seasons 1, 2, and 3 for people who like to listen to it on YouTube.
There's also a little bonus material. We did a little EP with of songs from the first season with little introductions by Althaar. So there's various bonus things on there too.
And if you just go to, and then there's also just a mix on SoundCloud of all the songs from seasons 1 and 2. And because we do write a lot of songs for the show, Berit and I. Berit's really also had to come into their own as a musical arranger. It's like, okay, Berit, now you have to write a Kurt Weill Bertolt Brecht song. Okay, now we have to
writer me always thinks these things are a great idea, and then I have to actually make them happen, and I'm so mad at myself. But I do end up pleased with the way they turn out usually.
Now we have to write a version of Freebird that doesn't really sound like Freebird for copyright reasons.
That is the full 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 22 instrument Broadway style number was the biggest learning curve for me.
Yeah. But so you can hear all of those separately on SoundCloud as well, or download them, the songs. And on SoundCloud, I'm not a huge fan of the platform, but the thing is, it's got the best sound quality, because every place else, it has to be, the original tracks have to be compressed to MP3. And on SoundCloud, Althaar and all of the Althaar stuff is in like full uncompressed WAV or AIFF. So it's a slightly better sound experience on SoundCloud. YouTube, it's there. I mean, so yeah, we have every possible link on the lifewithalthar.com site. So you can find Life with Althaar, you can read about it. It tells you where you can donate to us, because we are under a tax exempt nonprofit license, and no one has gotten paid to work on Althaar, who's been working on it for years.
We have a share system, basically.
We do have a share system. Everyone
is shared between all the company members.
Yeah, based on the amount of work. Yeah, and so we do. Everyone forever, when Althaar is over, the shares will be locked, and the IP is basically, to a certain extent, money-wise, owned by everybody in the company. I mean, it's owned and managed by Ian and Berit as Gemini Collision works, but our deal is, if we're ever paid for anything on Althaar, everyone is paid. Whoever did anything for a moment on Althaar. The husband of an actor who gave us a lift one day in a car to move sound
as half
equipment.
A share. Yeah.
As half a share. Yes.
Because he contributed to the show. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyone, that was always important to me, was anyone who lifted a finger to help with Althaar. If there was ever any kind of financial remuneration, they would get that. So that's why I put donate all over the place. I get self-conscious about it, but we've made this with nothing but Berit's and my funds, and everyone has essentially contributed their own money through their time, through travel, and so forth. So, and luckily it's also, we do have this it's a 25-person theater company that is devoted to the work that we do together. It's about our work. And so, and it's an amazing community of performers, actors, writers, who all basically have a point of view that works together. And Althaar, it's weird because so much of our work normally is pretty dark and depressing. It's funny, but it's usually very bleak, a lot of our stage work. And Althaar is not bleak. No. Even though it goes some very dark places, it's not bleak.
No, it's ultimately a hopeful statement.
And Berit has 3 times walked into a room while I was sitting there looking off in amazement, saying, "Do you know what you said about yourself?"
But then we made a show about the power of friendship.
Well, you said specifically about yourself. I am one of the most cynical. I have no hope generally in humanity. I've made this show about the power of friendship. And where did this come from? And I said, well, you may be dark and cynical, and you may have, a pretty bleak view of humanity in the future, but don't you believe that if we are going to survive as a species, as a people, that it is friendship and community that is what could ultimately save us?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been said many times that cynicism is, the idealism thwarted. So yeah, maybe I have created this world that works just a little better than our own, where the power of friendship is enough to actually save the galaxy.
Yeah, it's not a perfect world. I mean, bureaucracy is bureaucracy.
Terrible things still happen, but yeah.
But ultimately, when you have a friendship like Althaar's and John B's, and the extended found family community of the people around them on the fairgrounds, things are possible. And it was like, it was during the first season on some level of my own head, I realized I'm kind of writing about our theater company, aren't I? That, oh, it's like feeling like doing independent theater in New York where there's no money and you don't feel like you're part of the mainstream, but you know you're good and you know you're doing good work and you're happy because you're staying true to yourselves and you've got a bunch of people around you that are doing it with you. And okay, that's good.
I certainly think that some of the darker aspects of the show too are informed by it being written by a bunch of Americans who have lived through the past 5 years and everything that entails. I think a lot of that has made it into the show in one way or another.
No, one thing that was a big bonding experience for the company was we did a show a few years back before Eli was in the company called Can't. But everyone who was in Can't, with the exception of one person who went away to college, works on Althaar. And we were rehearsing that show during the end of the 2016 presidential campaign. We had our tech night the night after the election. And we had a party on our set the night before that turned into a wake. And I stayed in the theater all night working and didn't leave. And the cast came in and we knew we had made a show that was partially about how fascism could come to the United States. But it was a wild and wacky comedy with a dark edge. But we really suddenly bonded over that show, the company. It was our way of dealing with what was happening in the world. That kind of in some ways led to the closeness that came to making Althaar. The feeling of community among the characters on the fairgrounds. So yeah, please listen to us, donate, because right now, you know, I think Berit gets the most money, and I think that right now that's $35 of what we've made on the show so far. Some people make 11 cents. So, but yeah, it's we love this show and we love the audience, and it's been, you know, I'm looking forward to doing something else, but it's going to be hard to let go of this one too. I'm actually writing a story that's a benefit for anyone who donates a certain amount. I'm writing a short story. I think of it as fan fiction. Berit, of course, says
it's
a creator.
Not fan fiction because you're a co-creator. Yeah, it's a postscript. It's extended material.
I say it's now, or the term I now use from the DC universe, it's an imaginary story. But I'm writing I'm actually using a Alan Moore quote from Whatever Happened to the Man of Steel as the epigram on it. But yeah, it takes place 50 years after the events of the series and leads up to the death of one of the main characters of natural causes. But I needed to know that ending in order to leave Althaar behind too. I needed to kind of because we have a good ending for the series and it's how the series should end. But just as someone who's been living in this universe for a couple of years, I wasn't going to be able to get out of it unless I wrote an even more final ending for myself. And then I, share it with the fans if they want to know. want to know what I think happens in the 50 years after the series.
I can't thank you enough for entertaining me with this. It's been such a joy, and I can't wait to continue following it to the conclusion and seeing how this all wraps up, and then listening to it again, because it's been that kind of journey for me, and what a pleasant surprise, because you hope when you hear that somebody that you respect and care about is doing some work like this, because that's Eli was my gateway into this. Yeah. You hope that
thank you, Eli.
Yeah, you hope that you're going to like it, right? That's always the first thing. It's like, well, geez, I hope I like this thing.
Yes.
And then the pleasant surprise is when you go, oh, I don't just like this, I love this. I mean, this is really, really good, and it speaks to so many things that I like. I really do feel that this is the type of production that there's something in it for everybody. So it is something, if sci-fi is not normally your cup of tea, don't let that shy you away. Remember, sitcom is a big piece of this. I think this is the type of story that has something for everybody. So if you're listening to this, give it a shot. And I would say especially listen to it for at least the first 3 episodes, because by the time I hit episode 3, my journey had like expanded out, and I felt like I was settled in, and in a really, really fun and comfortable way. So I would encourage you, when you listen, give it a few episodes to just kind of experience the world, because you do think about episodes 1 and 2 differently when you get into episode 3, because there's so many threads that start to open up, and then you're cooking. So that would be my recommendation as a listener who just really enjoyed getting in the journey. But that's true of most long-form television shows, too. It's by that time you've settled in and gotten used to characters, and you're really invested at that point in a way that surprises you. So I do encourage everybody listening to this, check this out. You got to do yourself a favor and do it, because it's become very quickly one of my favorite things to listen to. So...
Thank you, Sean and Jim. And for me, for being a fan of you guys for so long, and every time I do something for you guys and I send it off, I'm the same. Well, I hope they like it. I hope they like it. And,
wait. Here's the thing. You say, as a fan of ours, you have been on the podcast more than anybody else. Because of the fact that everything that you've sent in, we wind up using as our closing themes. You really have been on the podcast for most of our tenure. So
it's been fun. I've been enjoying you guys for so long, and these ideas pop in my head, and I'm able to kind of make a thing and send it. And you guys, your reactions have always been so gratifying, and I really appreciate that you want to share it with your listeners, and that I'm part of it. And it's been great fun.
Well,
thank you, Eli, for connecting us also with Sean and Jim and letting me know about their show, because also, I've, dropped in and out of it because, I'm not a big comic reader now, but the DC universe from like 84 to 93 was huge for me. And I still have all of them. Like almost every DC comic from that period is still in boxes right in the other room. And I still have a big heart. My heart is around that universe in a lot of ways. So I do like to know what's going on in it and keep up with, even now, well, what are they doing with this character that I haven't read since 93? I still have fondness for that. So I like to check in and find out what's happening.
I'd like to ask you this, if you'd be up for it. I'm going to put you on the spot. When this wraps up, will you come back?
Yeah.
Because what I'd like to do is it'd be fun to talk to all of you post, when the show's done. And I think it'd be good for our listeners to say, hey, let's go on this journey together, and then let's talk about it afterwards, after it all wraps up. We
can spoiler with abandon at that point. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll all be weepy drunks when it's all over.
Oh man, we should do something like when they did the Cheers finale, which was a fiasco, where they did a live Tonight Show after the thing from the set of Cheers, and all with Jay Leno there, but all the actors had gotten hideously drunk, and it was a mess. It was like really barely television. So it was famously disastrous. And so that's what we should do at the end of Althaar, is get us all together and just like the whole Althaar company just gets blotto for the last episode. We would absolutely, if you liked this, I'm always self-conscious. I always talk too much. So
no, not on this show.
Oh, good. I guess that's what the podcast audience kind of wants for this thing now. So we would love to come back and talk. Absolutely. I'll let Berit talk more to her, try and get Berit to talk.
No, I appreciate letting you take the driver's seat, and I can just throw in when I have something to add. But
Berit likes being likes me to do the talking. And
I am generally the stage manager, and you are the director. Although, I am the keeper of lore.
The
for
very
Althaar,
harsh, and the very harsh taskmaster of even the sound designer, who tries to cut corners, and Berit won't allow it.
Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a great deal of fun for me and a real treat. So thank you for your time. I know, especially because you're in the middle of doing a production right now. So I appreciate you making some time out of that to join us.
Thank you
No,
so much.
it's yeah, thank you.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of our show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our show email address if you'd like to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. That's where you can find news about upcoming episodes. You'll also find that it links to Twitter. It also links to our Facebook fan page. We are also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community where you can talk about this and other episodes that we've put out. You can also feel free to lots of pop culture news that are really delivered there and commentary about that news that is safe and fun from people who are upbeat and really are there for the purpose of just getting the word out of new things. Yes, it's DC focused, but beyond that, people release all the time news about any related pop culture from other comic companies, from podcasts, from blogs, from gaming, from film, you name it. And I really appreciate the community there for making that such a safe place to talk about the things we all know and love. I'm proud to be associated with it. The About Us section of the show website's where you can find out how to connect with Jim and myself via social media and gaming platforms. We love to connect with you that way as well. Sponsoring us, as always, is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. DCB Service is your comic book and really pop culture-related pre-order source. Everything's at a discount. It's your chance to lock yourself in and make sure you get it at those discounted prices. InStockTrades.com is your place to go if you've missed any hardcovers, trade paperbacks, collected editions that you want to get at a discount. Still go over to InStockTrades.com and pick those up. I want to thank both companies for supporting our podcast. Jim, our next episode, we're going to be back this weekend with Superman and the Authority and Wonder Woman Black and Gold. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't
What
mean
are you
anything
trying
by
to say?
that.
I think
Sean,
you're right
Jim.
now. I don't know